after Porcfest officially ended on Sunday. And true to form, I did a pre-Porcfest episode, and this is going to be my post-Porcfest episode. And I did a video on this several years ago, 2019, maybe before. I think the first one where I questioned Porcfest was maybe 2016. I think I did a video titled Porcfest, quote, Jumping the Shark. So Porcfest is different this year. Was different this year. It's over now. Oh, and thank you to Christian for the shirts. He made the semi-official shirts. There weren't really any official shirts, but he made Porcfest 2020 shirts. So this year, Porcfest was very different for one main reason, coronavirus, and for probably a host of secondary reasons. So for those of you who aren't familiar, Porcfest is short for the Porcupine Freedom Festival, and it is one of, if not the main event put on by the Free State Project every year. So the Free State Project is a movement of libertarians. I would say like-minded, but that's not entirely correct because the political, social views, cultural views of Free Staters actually is quite varied. There's quite a wide spectrum of beliefs on whatever topic you choose to think on, but they basically agree to a minarchist, strongly libertarian political system if they may not agree on much else. And the Free State Project started as an idea in the mind of a graduate student by the name of Jason Sorens at Yale, who I want to say in 2000, 2001, something like that. Although similar ideas had been around. He actually put pen to paper and it started a conversation. Apparently there's originally an AOL chat room. And next thing you know, they formally decide to do it. They select New Hampshire after a lengthy process, narrowing it down between several states, but especially Wyoming and New Hampshire. New Hampshire selected. And the idea was that they'd get 20,000 people to, 20,000 libertarians specifically to move to New Hampshire. The number 20,000 was based on something like the number of votes that the LP got in a given year. And the idea was that once they had 20,000 people agree to move, those people would have 5 years to do so. They only recently got the 20,000. Well, actually now it's been 3 or 4 years. They now have something like 26,000 people who have agreed. And before they even, quote, triggered the move, people began moving. Now, New Hampshire was selected in part because it already had somewhat of a libertarian culture. The state motto is live free or die. You know, that's a fairly libertarian motto as far as they go, although such mottos aren't necessarily uncommon among the states, especially the original 13 colonies. And people started moving in, I think, 2002 or at least by 2003. And I heard about it more in 2006, 2007 time period, maybe a little bit later. And I moved myself after attending Porcfest. So initially Porcfest was just a group of Free Staters who would go camping together. I think the first one might have had 10 people, something like that, and it slowly became more and more popular. And instead of only taking a few days, say on the weekend, it started to encompass more and more of the week. It shifted locations once or twice, but settled on a place, a very, very scenic campground in northern New Hampshire, a place called Rogers Campground, near the town of Lancaster, or rather in the town of Lancaster, New Hampshire, with a stunning view of the White Mountains. And I think this is the 17th or 18th Porcfest, something like that. Slowly the event became larger and larger. Instead of people just coming to camp, you started having vendors show up. You started having more organization, lectures. Lectures could be quite eclectic, anything from cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, to weaving, to making your own AK-47, to beekeeping, to polyamory, to political activism, to schools of choice, to homeschooling, to any issue related to libertarianism or its cultural effects. And really quite a lot was going on. When I started going in 2012, there were probably, I always heard, I didn't count, but it seemed plausible to me, maybe 3,000, 4,000 people going, maybe not all at once, but over the course of the week. And then in 2015, there was a bit of a, between 2015 and 2016, there was a bit of a jump the shark. That's why I made the video, Porcfest Jump the Shark. There's a lot of political infighting between a guy named Ian Freeman, who's a popular, successful radio talk show host of the show Free Talk Live, which is, I'm pretty sure how I found out about the Free State Project, although I haven't been a listener to that show in many years. And he was basically officially ostracized from official Free Stater functions, including the Porcfest. So He is there now. He went last year as well, but this caused a lot of acrimony, and a lot of people, you know, were upset with that and stopped going. Um, the nature of the event really did change. More and more families were coming. This is like the only libertarian event that's not a complete sausage fest. The sexual ratio is pretty even. David Friedman, who's gone many, many years, has commented on this repeatedly, that in his many years of working the libertarian circuit, this is the one and only place that he goes where there's actually a sexual balance, where there are actually families, and it's very encouraging that there's kids. And there's actually a lot of kids who have grown up in the Free State Project now and in going to Porcfest. You know, I'm recognizing some of these people that I saw maybe when they were 8 uh, or 9 or 10 and who are now 18, 19, 20, who've been going every year, who have been living in New Hampshire, maybe someplace else, and are very much keyed into the movement and actually kind of growing up in it, which is a kind of a unique situation to find oneself in. And the other thing, though, that happened in addition to Ian getting kicked out is Porcfest was becoming increasingly organized. The prices of entry were going higher and higher. The regulations on where you could have a vendor, who could vend, what you could vend. A lot of the wacky and wild, anarchy that made it popular was kind of distilling. There was a case in 2011, I believe, when NPR did a story on it, and they reported that there was a 9-year-old running a bar, which apparently was correct. There was a 9-year-old running a bar. By the way, that guy would probably be, like 18 at this point, and selling hard liquor, and raise some eyebrows. So it's still Porcfest. You still see people carrying guns around. There's still all kinds of drugs for sale. There's still all kinds of other things for sale, whether money, gold, silver, Bitcoin, crypto. All that stuff is much in evidence, much an active part of it. But the fees were going up. It was getting more and more regulated. They were asking that people wear wristbands, yeah, so that was something that, I mean, a lot of people were getting upset with. They didn't like having to wear wristbands or having to be asked to show ID to go listen to a lecture. So, Porcfest was a sponsor, and they would have lectures by whoever, and they kind of sometimes were trying to make it so that you couldn't go unless you did pay. And it was just not, it was something that some people were happy with and other people were less happy with. And because of COVID-19, there was suddenly a hard retrograde where that was let go. For organizational reasons and liability reasons, they basically had to have it much, much less organized. A few years ago, some of the people, clearly inspired by the cryptocurrency trends, created the so-called Forkfest, where basically an alternative version of Porcfest that forked away from regular Porcfest. And initially, this was more of a teleological fork. So Porcfest would either happen before or after Porcfest. This year, it basically happened during. Porcfest became limited to a single area, technically, of the campground. The rest of the campground was just a campground that tons of people were at, and technically, I mean, I don't know if you want to say technically, but in some sense became the Forkfest. So this was an interesting year because of COVID and because of everything. I thought it was a year that might be more meaningful in the sense that this would be more civil disobedience than typical, because a gathering like this would not be allowed legally under the decree of the governor. Now, as it turned out, the decree of the governor was walked back enough that I don't think that Porcfest this year was actually in violation of any decree of the governor. I actually think that would have been pretty cool if it had been. It would have been interesting to see what would have happened. My guess is nothing. One of the things I learned while I was there is that it's very likely that the governor of New Hampshire made a decree very similar to the decree in Massachusetts that was completely unenforced. So no businesses that stayed open, no events that stayed scheduled were actually punished in any way. But the idea was that if they left it, and I'm not justifying this, by the way, this is the rationale that I was given, and maybe it's giving too much credit to the governor, Chris Sununu. But if they said, hey, New Hampshire's open for business and everything's fine, it would have meant that millions of people, literally on a daily basis from Massachusetts, would have come to New Hampshire. Now, that would have been to do business, to get their haircuts, to go shopping, to do whatever, to have assemblies, to go hiking, to go camping, whatever it may be, go to the beach. Now, that would have been great for business. Also would have looked really bad if you were worried about a pandemic, having millions of people from a populated state that was having a more difficult problem time with the pandemic than pandemic COVID than New Hampshire was. Uh, that's maybe giving him too much benefit of the doubt. But regardless, I thought that there might be more meaning to Porcfest if it was actually uh, a, a an act of civil disobedience in and of itself. It wasn't technically. He walked back his orders. No, I don't think because of Porcfest necessarily, although perhaps. And the event went on, and it was very interesting. It was much less organized. Uh, so yeah, I'll get to your questions in a minute, people. Let me talk about Porcfest first. Um, so typically Porcfest begins on Monday at 8 a.m. and they have lectures in multiple different areas. They have different areas set up, a main pavilion, a couple other tents, and then there are alternative events that are also scheduled by just non-affiliated. There's a left libertarian organization that always runs something called the Alternative Expo. These start at 8 a.m. on Monday and they go all the way until 10 p.m. on Saturday night. Then there's campfires every night. That's a great time to go and connect and to have great discussions and get to know people better. And this year there were no official events until I think Thursday morning at 8. There were far fewer of them. There were fewer farther between. They did not have many formal speakers. The only one of note really that most people would have heard of would be Tom Woods. It was interesting to see Tom Woods, and I'll talk about what he said here in a minute. But he was the only, quote unquote, big name speaker to come. He only gave, I think, 2 formal lectures. He hung out there for several days with his girlfriend. I'll say, without spilling the beans, he's being pretty public about it, I guess. So we'll talk about that in a second. Um, so uh, that's how it was a very different context. There was much less organization. It was much more spontaneous, which is great. There were also fewer people, I think, because of COVID. But I don't know. I was hearing around 1,000 people. That sounds about right to me. I didn't take a formal survey. It wasn't empty by any means. There were a lot of familiar faces. There were a lot of new faces. Several events that I went to where they asked if this was people's first Porcfest to New Hampshire within the last year. So that's it was refreshing to have it be a little bit more open. I wish that I would have had more speakers, although to be honest, going to the speakers is only at best half of the reason to go. I think more speakers probably would bring more people. I know a lot of people think, well, who am I going to hear? Oh, if I get a chance to hear A, B, and C, maybe I'll go. And if there is only A or nobody, then they may not go. So before I get into the meat of the rest, let me just talk briefly about Tom Woods. Tom, I've felt this way about him for a while. I think Tom is a lot smarter and has a lot more things than he can say than he actually presents. Now, I don't think he's dumbing things down, but he seems to want to talk about stuff in the most mundane, superficial way possible, and I know that he can talk about it better. So he gave a keynote address on how to be a better person. Well, I don't come to Tom Woods to get life coaching advice. That's not the reason. I don't think anyone would want to listen to him. He has a lot of insights onto history, on economics, on political discourse that are worth hearing and listening to. He's not a life coach, okay? So I don't know why that would be the thing that he talks about. Also, it was a little weird. He was walking around with what appears to be his girlfriend. He made a lot of allusions, and these are public, so I'm not spilling any kind of gossip here, about having some kind of deep problem last year that he was really upset about, that he and Michael Malice conciliated over. And when I saw him the first night, he showed up at night on Wednesday night. He was walking around with this big girl who I initially thought maybe that's one of his daughters, because I know he's got like 5 daughters. Well, no, that's like his girlfriend, and she was very clearly flirting with him during his lecture, and he was clearly flirting with her back, or at least that's exactly how it looked to me. Very strange. I know he's supposed to be this buttoned-up Catholic gentleman, but maybe not. I don't know. I don't know everything there. I didn't obviously ask him about it, but his lecture was very, it's a series of anecdotes and him telling stories, which, haha, a lot funny, but like that's not why I would go listen to him. And during the lecture, somebody came up, somebody I talked to later, 17-year-old kid who asked him, libertarians disagree about open borders and immigration. What are your thoughts on that? Where you fall? And he gave a very nice little discussion about the various pros and cons and the various strengths and weaknesses of those positions, where they fall, where the crux of the argument is. And I thought that was really nice. And I would have much rather have listened to him elaborate on that or give a talk along those lines in the talk that he actually gave, which was just a whole bunch of feel-good anecdotes that I don't really think were that valuable. I mean, yeah, it's nice to see it's someone that you've been watching for a long time. I mean, I've obviously been aware of Tom Woods since at least 2006 or 7, and it was cool to see him in person. He's actually very short. But in terms of like content, that's not really content that I would find terribly interesting. So there it is. Jeffrey Tucker was also there. I didn't listen to what he had to say. He seems to go all the time. I think Jeffrey Tucker likes to come. He kind of falls in the same category as David Friedman here, or maybe Bob Murphy. All those guys I've seen multiple times. They usually come and stay much longer. Some speakers will come if they speak on Saturday. They're only there Friday night and they leave Saturday night. You know, that was the approach that, say, David Smith did. But other people, why did I say David Smith? It sounds weird to even say it that way. But, you know, David Friedman will come and spend multiple days there where he's not even lecturing. He'll only give the keynote lecture at the end, and the rest of the time he's hanging out, he's camping, he's talking to people, right? So I think Tom Woods had a good time with his, as he described it, lady friend and much younger, much larger lady friend. But so the lectures, there were just not as many, and they weren't that good. There weren't any that well, the only ones that I found particularly interesting were the New Movers ones. These were Free Stater ones where they had people talking about the Free State, what it's like, how to move it, how things are going. An update on that, by the way, is they think about 5,000 people have moved. There's about 26,000 people who have agreed to move, and they're now pushing, trying to get those people to move. If they followed their agreements, and bear in mind, some of these people signed 10, 15 years ago. Some of them might be dead, who knows. But they would presumably move next year. You know, I'm skeptical that all of them will, but maybe some. We'll see. I think there's actually a chance that on net, COVID will actually push people to move. Some people won't, some people will, but on net, I think that will be the effect, potentially. But it was interesting to hear their perspectives. They had a lot of international people. They had South Africans, French guys, two French people, a French couple, Russians, and Chinese woman. A very, very anti-communist, inspirational speaker Chinese woman who you know, stood up on stage and said, "Give me liberty or give me death," in her very hilarious accent. So that was all good. But of course, the best things about Porcfest is the people that you meet, reuniting with old friends, reconnecting with old friends. Many old friends, sometimes people I hadn't seen in many years. So Christian, always good to see you. Ed, if you watch this, it was good to see you after however many years it's been. Derek J. I mean, I've known Derek for a long time, and I don't see him. I see him more than once every year, but it was good to see him again. He was very much into the Forkfest, polycentric legal order, all that. He always hosts a nice party in a dome. He puts a lot of effort into that, and it's a good time and an impressive effort on his part, he and his partner's part, Stephen. So that was fun. The petty capitalism was fun. The child capitalism, very fun. I love the child labor. That's really cool to see kids out there working, doing the hustle, doing side jobs, becoming entrepreneurial. I love that. I think that's really valuable. I met, this is funny, the guy who asked Tom Woods the one question that made him give an interesting talk. I saw him grabbing dinner later. Younger guy. He was with another younger guy. We started talking. They were both from New York City. And the younger one was very smart. He was wearing a Ron Paul 2012 shirt. And when I found out he was 17, obviously he's way too young to have remembered that really or been active at that point. He's somebody who was turned on to the ideas of liberty quite apparently from watching YouTube clips of the Ron Paul Giuliani debate, famous debate from, I forget now, is that 2012 or 2008? Jeez, it's been so long. Anyway, he described himself as anarchy curious, and you know, we're having this discussion. He actually had seen a channel. He goes, "Hey, do you have a YouTube channel?" I go, "I do." And he's like, "I watched your Best Libertarian Books show video because he wanted to learn more books on libertarianism." And then he asked jokingly, did I really think Mein Kampf was the best libertarian book?" So if you go back and watch that video, you'll get the joke. But what's fascinating too, so they were cool guys, but as we were sitting there talking, you know, he was 17, his brother was 19. They rented a car, drove up from New York City, had a jolly old time. He said they really liked seeing all the guns. That's something they weren't used to, obviously, but they felt very comfortable with. They felt very safe, as indeed you would feel very safe in that situation. There's absolutely no way anything's going to happen when whatever 10% of the people are armed. And then they casually just took out a couple Coronas and started drinking them. You know, like in public, in open, no problem. And I was told they had no problem getting them either, which is wonderful. So, and I don't drink. I'm a teetotaler. I actually don't think that they should drink, but it was nice that they were open to do so, and I think they appreciated the the sentiment there. So it's just nice to go and reconnect. It seems like it does have this effect and want to make you re-energized. There's a lot going on in the Free State that I wasn't active or didn't know about that I want to become active in. Apparently there is regular free gun training going on. There's people who have gun ranges that if you are interested in going to, you can go, and they have people who are apparently credentialed. I would have to double check this, but apparently these are actually skilled marks people, Green Berets, things like that. Not necessarily that all Green Berets are skilled marksmen, but that are offering this stuff kind of for free because they're into it. Another thing is a lot of people talked about the farming. There are Free Staters who own farms, and the largest ones are apparently sufficiently productive that they could actually feed the entire Free State project in terms of the number of pigs, chickens, cattle, whatever. So there's that. Apparently there have been these potluck dinners going on where people have been getting together in defiance of the governor's orders, on a daily, weekly basis. So all of that's been really good. And then it was kind of hammered home just yesterday. I went down to Massachusetts and I went to a shopping center. Massive culture shock. Massive, unexpected culture shock. I ran to the store because I just had to pick up like one thing. I walked in and every single person, every employee, every pet, this is in Massachusetts, in Amherst, Mass., every single person had a mask on. And I got so many dirty looks. And I can't say I didn't give a fuck, but like, that's not how it is in New Hampshire. It hasn't been that way ever, even at the worst part of the pandemic, or whatever you want to call it. Some people call it a scamdemic. I won't go that far, but it was amazing culture shock, especially considering that this is an area that's only a few miles from New Hampshire. So there's a huge difference. Also, just the BLM signs everywhere. So I think that this was actually a really great, I want to say retrogression, but return to form for Porcfest. I would love to see, I don't want to pay extra to have a big packet, a big gift bag at the beginning. I don't need security. There's definitely no need for security. They don't need to be regulating vendors. And if they take our money, the only thing they should be doing is giving money to speakers to get them there. That's really the only thing that I would be cared to give money for. And so anything else, I think I would not. I like giving money to the Free State Project because I like the Free State Project and I'm a part of it after all. But I like that it was more decentralized, more just open, letting people do their own thing, talk with who they want, do with what they want, have 1,000, as Mao said, have 1,000 flowers bloom. And I think that this was good. And I hope that next year we just have kind of a similar thing going on, just without a pandemic and more people coming. Obviously, there was a much smaller group of international people there. I mean, if they were international, they were people who were already in the States for the last few months. I don't think anyone came. And I did meet a really lovely couple, one of whom was South African, and so it was really nice talking to them, if they happen to watch. And again, there were Jamaicans. I actually met several Jamaicans. There are actually quite a few Jamaicans there, believe it or not. Quite a few Eastern Europeans, a lot of Belarusians, Russians. A lot of them have found their way to New Hampshire over the years. So that was all good. I do feel somewhat energized. I do want to start doing the gun training, which apparently is free. Got the ammo and the guns, so that's something I feel like I should be more active in. Yeah, lots of capitalism going on, lots of markets going on. And again, I love all the like, they had an article that came out, some of you may have seen it just maybe a week or two before Porcfest, about a family of Free Staters who moved here, and they had a son who was 12, who's now 19, and he owns 200 acres of land that he pays $100 in taxes on every year. And that's the kind of people that are getting brought up here. And there's a whole network of homeschoolers here. I didn't see anything on it this year, but when I went last year, there was a lot of talk about it. I think there's several hundred families of homeschoolers coordinating, and probably a similar number who are just not coordinating. And I think that that's really exciting. So Porcfest was fine. I wish that more people came. I understand why more people didn't. They were very open. If you some people did wear masks, and people were appreciated. People were very open about, hey, if that's how you feel comfortable, if that's what you're happy with, by all means. And if you're not, by all means. There is something very interesting where there's guns everywhere, there's drugs everywhere. People's opinions vary by wide margins on a huge number of topics. But if you agree on a certain basic principles, like the NAP, for instance, you can be incredibly tolerant. And so people can be atheists or Muslims or Jews, militantly or moderately on any one of those, and all of that would be represented there, and they'll be fine. They can be hippies or high-functioning millionaires. I mean, there's capitalists. There's people who are millionaires, who are high-functioning, wealthy, run businesses, run real estate. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of people who are just, couch bums. And we can all get along with some very basic rules of civility. And, the more armed we are, the better in a lot of ways. So, really nice. I hope that next year it's just bigger because more people go, and that it's not more regulated. So, no Bill Weld. No. Okay. Sorry, guys. I had a feeling that these questions were going to be about something else, and indeed they are, and I will talk about that very briefly. Not very briefly, because it's probably going to keep coming up. But anyway, if you have never gone to Porcfest, I would consider trying to think about going next year. I have no reason to think that it wouldn't be as good or better next year. And I think it's one of the mainline libertarian events in the world. It's a very interesting and unique event. I mean, Mises U is amazing. Students for Liberty is amazing. Freedom Fest. These are all wonderful things, sure, but everything is unique, and I think this is especially unique, and it's really fun. You'll never know who you're going to meet, who you're going to connect with, and what you're going to learn. You can learn all kinds of stuff. There's a great place to just have an enriching social experiment and experience with people. So, are you going to cover the recent wave of conservative YouTubers having their channels deleted? Well, so I'm aware of this. I don't know all the details. Everyone knows about it. I don't know what I would add, other than it's clearly hypocritical and they're using double standards or whatever. And look, they are private companies. I love how the left is selective about that. If they're a private company banning right-wing people, that's fine. They have private property. They can do whatever they want. If they're a private company banning left-wing people or gay people or whatever, then that's not okay. There's a public interest that they have to follow or whatever. And they're complete, like and I'll attribute this as Daniel Clavin says, the left standards are all double standards, and this is just another illustration of that. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that too. Do you think it's an attempt to silence right before the elections? I do. They may be consciously or unconsciously aware of that. The fact that it's coordinated and it's happening in multiple different platforms all at the same time to the same people is an indication that it's explicit, that they know exactly what they're doing. How was Porcfest? Okay, it was great. American Enterprise Institute just got taken down. Where? On YouTube, on Facebook? Zionism is unstoppable. Thought Tom was married or something. Yeah, so Tom, I thought he was too. He has 5 kids. I know he made a move, which I always thought was strange. He moved from Kansas to Florida. It wasn't clear to me why he lived in Kansas. It wasn't clear to me why he moved to Florida. At his lecture, he said at the start of 2019, he was very depressed, very sad. He couldn't get out of bed. He said, and again, this isn't secret. He gave this in a public lecture, so I don't feel any compulsion not to talk about it since people are asking. He said that Michael Malice actually offered to fly down to console him and help him get out of bed. And now he was saying he feels much better now and everything's better. Oh, and by the way, here's my lady friend who I'm clearly flirting with in the audience, who, I mean, is like literally, I won't make a joke, but they don't match, if that makes any sense. Is that his girlfriend? I thought it was, when the first time I saw him, oh, it's his daughter, and his daughter is like a head taller than he is. And like, no. She actually got up and asked him a question, but it was a flirty question. She asked him if a hot dog is a sandwich or not, and he laughed. He goes, that's my lady friend, haha. Okay, so she's way too young to be his wife, way too young. So I don't know. Speculation from my end would be he had some kind of marital problems, and this is his girlfriend. I mean, he called her his lady friend, so I don't know what else to call her, but it wasn't his daughter. His daughters weren't there. His wife wasn't there. He was there with another woman and maybe a second other woman. Maybe. Oh, you heterosexuals. So disgusting. Was David Friedman there this year? No, he was not. I heard that he thought about it, but he was concerned about Corona, so he didn't come. But he's always come in the past and usually stays for some, half the week, sometimes more. Did you prefer this year's Porcfest or last year's? I think I'm going to say I prefer this year's. Also, to reiterate at this point, Ian Freeman is back, which I think is good. Now, there's reasons why he was gone, which I didn't agree with, and I think the Free State Project was petty and hypocritical in banning him in the first place. It's not quite as lively as it was before. In the past, they would run LRN the entire time, and it was kind of like a major hub of activity. The Pavilion was a hub, and LRN was a hub, and that has diminished. There's also been a problem with non-Free Staters, non-Porcfest people coming to Porcfest because it is a big party, because it's one of the few things going on in the city, and wrecking it. So apparently one year, LRN would film in this enclosed space, this large lounge area. It was a really nice place to go if it was raining or if it was hot, because it was out of the weather and they had air conditioning. And apparently one year somebody smashed a window, or not a window, but a mirror, and got hurt. And then 2 years ago, or maybe last year, somebody who, again, someone who had not come to Porcfest formally, not a Free Stater, somebody, just a local person who came here to have a good time, tried to jump over the fire, fell in, and got covered in third-degree burns. And so now the fire there still is a fire. There's quite a large fire most nights. The first 2 nights we were there was no fire because it was too dry. But then there were bonfires after that, and they were wonderful. Bonfires are some of the nicest events. There's something, and I'm sure this is not unique to libertarians or Porcfest, but there's something about socializing around a fire, which, evolutionarily feels very satisfying, and that's a big part of Porcfest. Although it's good to go to bed, relatively early again. And not have to, you love the smell of a fire when you're there. You don't love the smell of it after. I think he avoids open borders debates on purpose. Maybe. But if that's true, then, I don't know if that's true. If it is, shame on him. It's an interesting topic, and he dealt with it very fairly when the question was put to him. I think he did a good job steel-manning both sides of the argument and just pointing out these are the major cruxes, and this is where the debate would hinge, and I think that he handled it in a very mature way. So he's willing to touch that. He should, he handled it very well. I wonder if Brian's Sovereign will show up again. I don't think he was this year. Bitcoin Motorist. Oh, yeah, Porcfest is fun. Did they have a gay dance party? No. So this is another thing that I really miss about it. And this isn't really Porcfest's fault per se, but for many years there was something called Buzz's Big Gay Dance Party. And Buzz is a lesbian from New York City, who anarcho-capitalist. Apparently she became an anarcho-capitalist during the HIV crisis, where she discovered the government's evil. Okay, well, whatever it takes, people. She's been coming to Porcfest for a long time. I'm not sure when she started, but she would set up a large dance floor, stripper poles, whatever, and she would spend the whole week setting this up and then host a big party on Friday night, usually, maybe Saturday night, called Buzz's Big Gay Dance Party. Now, Buzz is gay. There are gay people who go. Gay people are represented at Porcfest, but they're not many. There might be 10 or 15 or something like that, tops, on a good year. So most of the people who go to Buzz's Big Gay Dance Party are definitely not gay. They're straight, but it's a nice party. It's a lot of fun. People go crazy. I remember one year Doug French was giving a lecture at the same time, and he was like, "Thank you for coming. It's hard to compete with the gay dance party." But something happened. Apparently Buzz, I could remember this wrong, Buzz left some of her stuff at Rogers Campground, and then after Porcfest, a lot of it got stolen or misplaced or damaged or something. And that really was a labor of love for her. She made money, but she was doing it for the fun of it, and she just decided it wasn't fun anymore, so she stopped doing it. It was hosted one more year by kind of other people who made profit off of it, and then I haven't seen those people back at Porcfest in years. I know who they are, and they just haven't gone. And so there hasn't been anything that big. Now, people have tried to follow it up, and there have been smaller versions of it. Toga Party one year, and then Derek J. Freeman's, or Horton, depending on what he goes by these days, hosts the his own party, and it's a very different vibe. Like, he's much more exclusive. The atmosphere is much more sophisticated, and it's just also a much smaller venue. Like, they cannot fit hundreds and hundreds of people like you could at Buzz's. So there's an element of that there, but it's not the same, and it's a little bit smaller. Perhaps necessarily so. Gun Church. Yeah, I definitely want to get involved in Gun Church. I'll be talking to those guys. There was a Boogaloo Luau. I mean, lots of fun. Jeffrey Tucker was the best speech as usual. I missed it. I was busy that day, not at Porcfest. Also, really fun. I was just, to advertise New Hampshire. The day that I left, I went up to the shores of Mount Washington to the Ammonoosuc River, which is quite a beautiful river, and there's a stunning cliff jump. There's an area where the river comes in a series of cascades and waterfalls, forms a large, deep pool. It's quite clear, and you can jump. There's 3 or 4 different jumps. The highest ones they look about 35 feet, and there's 2 other ones that are more like 10 or 15 feet. And I have never seen a more perfect place to jump off a cliff into water, and it was a lot of fun. Water was crystal clear, rainbow trout, rapids, and it was stunning. I had a great time. And thank you for Derek J. for posting a video about that, so I knew about it. I didn't know where it was. I had to ask a local. The hypnotism came in very useful in that part of the escapade. Toronto wants to make it mandatory to wear masks now because some people are not taking it seriously. Sounds like a good reason for mass disobedience. No, Bill Weld. I mean, Gary Johnson and Bill Weld both were very out of place. I don't think Gary Johnson actually was there, but his people were there handing out his stuff, and it was nauseating. How happy will you be when COVID finally blows over? Look, COVID has not been, for me personally, a huge... The main thing is it's kept me out of the gym and out of jiu-jitsu, and that has sucked. But I've been hiking, I've been swimming, I've been reading, I picked up new skills that I may not have otherwise picked up. So it hasn't been that bad for me personally. No one I know has been sick at all. I'm sure I know people who caught it, but just didn't get very sick. So it hasn't been that bad for me at all. And I think that it's going to be interesting to see, but I think the net effect is going to be positive in the sense that the government has fucked up so terribly. No one's in public schools. This is huge. I don't think we can... It would be hard to overestimate how big of a deal this is, that just no one's in public schools. No one's in colleges. Some colleges are not reopening this year. Many colleges have gone out of business even. So like this has been something, and it's not been all bad. Oh wait, it passed. Now legally you're required to wear a mask. Oh, Stephen, I think you should move to New Hampshire then, don't you? Favorite ebooks on American slavery. I haven't read any ebooks on American slavery, but my favorite books on American slavery would be African Slavery in Latin America, Time on the Cross, American Slavery, American Freedom, Emancipating Slaves and Enslaving Freemen, Competition and Coercion by Robert Higgs, and that's probably it. I hope you guys can hear all that. Emancipating Slaves and Enslaving Freemen is probably the best of those, and American Slavery, American Freedom is probably the number 2, in my opinion. I liked all the Porcfests I've been to, so do I. Even the ones that I didn't think were as good were still good. Do you notice how I went from stay at home to wear a mask? Molyneux got bad. Yes, and everyone here knows I'm no Molyneux fan, but he shouldn't have gotten banned, and I read the only thing they said is he violated, quote, community guidelines, which seems completely arbitrary. So I'm sure they're just making shit up, and he should not have gotten banned. Look, he's full of shit. He's the most narcissistic person that you're going to find, but he shouldn't have gotten banned. I have no problem saying that. Tom got divorced. Okay. Was publicized last year. Okay. So no secret there. I didn't know that, but I'm not surprised to hear that after what I saw this week. Would you go on the Contra cruise? They're not having the Contra cruise anymore. They won't for a couple years. He did talk about that. They may start in the future, but with Corona, it's not going to happen. I don't listen to the Contra Krugman podcast, and I never did. So, and I think that they were belittling themselves by just talking about Paul Krugman. That kind of is like turning yourself into a barnacle, and they're both much more than that. Right? Maybe publish a single book, Contra Krugman or something. But to have that be the whole thing is beneath both of their talents, in my opinion. I thought it was his daughter too. Yeah, I just assumed that was his daughter. Oh, that's his oldest daughter. Because, you know, like Brian Kaplan will bring his sons, right? It's normal for these people to kind of bring their families with them. And I thought it was his daughter, but she was not. So much for being a traditional Catholic. Yep, very true. Tom can do better. You know, because I didn't want to say this, but like, there's enough libertarian fangirls out there. There's enough. And he's got a high enough profile that that's 100% right. But, you know, let's be fair to her. Maybe she's got qualities we don't know about. I never talked to her. I don't know how she is in bed. I don't know. Like, I saw her cutesy, like, whatever. Maybe there's a lot more to her that we don't know, or maybe there's just something about her that's really valuable to Tom, right? It's perfectly possible to have somebody where you don't see the value, there's no qualities they have that matter to you, but they might have a quality that matters to somebody else, even if that somebody else is somebody who you think, you know, could quote do better. So I'm not going to really begrudge that. It just was weird. I saw Ian Freeman doing camera work that. Yeah, so the ban of Ian Freeman ended, and he was allowed to come, but it was low-key. He didn't broadcast anything. He did broadcast this time, but not inside the building. He had a tent, and he broadcast LRN from there. And I do miss LRN. Isn't Cal? If there are BLM speakers invited to Porcfest, would you go hear them speak? Yeah, of course. And I would like to ask them questions like, why are you communists? Like, there's so many questions to go about reparations and where you think this is going, and what about police brutality that's clearly not racially motivated, and what's your even evidence that there is? What's the end game? Blah, blah, blah. There's so many questions and so much, and I would love to see them get grilled and ask honest questions. And maybe there's areas of agreement, and there may be, but I don't think that they're down for that. I don't think they would like that. Uh, have all the COVID. Yeah, we are not going to know mortality rates or infection rates for COVID until at least a year from now. They're going to have to do some meta-analysis of population, and even then it's going to be a estimate. It's much lower than 3%. It's probably closer to 0.3%, maybe more, but it's closer to that than it is to 1, I bet. Would be open to having leftists talk. Yeah, leftists, look, that's fine. We always have left libertarians. People disagree on a lot of things. There's protectionists there. There's statists there. Like, I almost feel like there's a bigger difference between an anarchist and a minarchist than there is between a minarchist and a communist. In some respects, I feel like they're more similar. Now, in other respects, maybe that's not correct, but I would have no problem having, you know, speakers who disagree. I don't want to just hear people I agree with. That's fine, as long as they can take questions. And actually, that would be more interesting, right? To have, oh, Tom Woods, we all agree with you on everything. Let's just you know, complain about the things we already all agree on. I mean, that's fine. There's something cathartic about that, but Um, would you argue that slavery is a violation of the freedom of association? Absolutely, because you are forcing people to associate with you. I saw a comment you left on an old Breaking Bad video. Okay, since you've seen the show, does Gus Fring remind you of Obama? He does. He's actually, I looked him up once because he was in a movie. He was in Taps. He's like Danish or Swedish. Like he was born in like Scandinavia. Um, I've never seen Brian Kaplan at Porcfest. No, I haven't seen him at Porcfest, but I've seen him at International Students for Liberty. It would be awesome if he did go to Porcfest, and Michael Humer has been to Porcfest, and they're very good friends. Um, what do you think of the whole white Jesus controversy? Don't care. Did Brett Venat show up? I didn't see him, but I don't recognize him super well, so he could have been there. I just didn't notice. Um, did you see Brett? You're gonna have to be more specific. Um, Biden claims he would make everyone wear masks. I'd like to see how he enforces that. Yeah, that would be interesting to see how he enforces that. So, any other? I know people are really curious about these bans. I don't know. Look, this is nothing new. They've been doing this. It's not good. This is all the more reason to have alternative things. Where I fall on it is I do think they're private and they have the right to do this. I just wish that they would not be hypocritical about it and then say, oh, if you're conservative or whatever, that we can force you to do business or not to do business. Um, they also play fast and loose with the whole publisher, non-publisher thing. Oh, you can't sue us because we're not a publisher, we're just a platform, and then they start doing editing, editorializing, and then they are a publisher in that case. So that means they are liable, and they are being hypocrites on this. They're kind of arguing out of both sides of their mouth on that issue. But I think they're just going to push people into other mediums. There are already alternatives. Maybe they're not as big, but they're growing, and people will go there. They're just pushing people away and pissing people off. Oh, another interesting thing. I met some locals. So I met somebody who is from New Hampshire uh, and was active in politics, conservative person, and he didn't know what the Free State Project was. And then when he found out that something like 40 or 50 state senators or state congress people are free staters, he was like, "Holy cow! This is like some some force, some actual political force that's taking root in the state, that's been taking root in the states already well established politically." And that's kind of interesting. So free staters make up about 10% of the legislature, but 0.5% of the population. So 20 times outside, and that's even considering that a large number of free staters are anarchists who do not vote or give money. So it's probably more like 0.25% of the population, contributing to 10% of the legislature. So if we can up that, if we can double, like the political possibilities here are very real. That's not to say libertarian dictatorship or anything like that, but political influence in a way that is quite unique and very, very has a lot of potential anyway, without making too many predictions about what exactly will happen. Because now you can't claim that I said something. I don't feel sorry for Molyneux because he got a channel eliminated that criticized him. I feel more sympathy for Spencer and Duke because they did not try and ban. That's a good point. Molyneux is a hypocrite and not principled, which is amazing for a guy who considers himself the most principled philosopher king in history. But I think it's also important to realize what was done to him was not done for justice. It wasn't done because the people in YouTube or Google or wherever else saw his hypocrisy and whatever, and the right thing to do wouldn't be to punish him, it would be to restore true sheaves. Which, if they really wanted to hurt Molyneux, that would be the best way, to just let his critics not be banned, right? So on the one hand, YouTube defends Molyneux by taking down his most cogent critics, who, by the way, are just posting clips of him saying outrageous things. And then years later, when it's politically convenient, so they're not doing it. This isn't justice. You might say it's karma, but it's not justice. And it's not fair to him, even if he deserves it in some metaphysical sense. Do you think that most Antifa people probably don't even know what a fascist is? I think that most of them do. I think that the really activist people know enough about the history that they know about, say, the Weimar Republic, the Freikorps, Rosa Luxemburg. They know about Trotsky. They know about the White Armies. They know about the Russian Civil War. They know about the Spanish. They know about the Spanish Civil War. They know about the Falange. They know about Franco. They know about those things to some extent. In fact, it's actually kind of weird. They're almost like time capsules where people who are fighting the battles, the leftist battles of the 1930s, the Stalin versus Mao, the communists versus the anarchists, that's still the battle that's happening in the now abandoned Chaz, right? This battle was going on in Chaz, right? The Bolshevik vanguard communists versus the left, Kropotkin, anarcho-syndicalists. They hate each other, and they're still fighting that battle. It's just, I think that they are a tempest in a teapot, and I think they are completely underestimating the forces of counter-revolution in this country. I could be wrong, but I just think they have no clue. And I mean, a lot of left anarchists, Russian revolutionaries, would have told you this. I think Ho Chi Minh would have told you this. That kind of revolution is never happening in the United States, ever. And anyone who makes a serious attempt of it is going to die. They're going to have to go the Fabian socialist route. That's what's getting credence in the United States, is the Fabian socialist route. The people who broke with the Marxists around 1900 or before to say, okay, we're going to work with capitalism, and we're going to curb it to our ends. They're the ones who are the more dangerous ones. They're the ones who have gotten way, way more accomplished, and they're the much more sinister, I would say. But I think that they're almost like a people out of time, that they're still having that same debate. That's still what they care about. That's still what motivates them. Or these are people who are going to come down hard on the Stalin versus Trotsky debate. So, yeah. Hey, Dread Pirate Alex, good to see you. No point watching YouTube if the only approved content is making tutorials and unboxing videos. Yeah. Hey, Edward, good to see you. It was good to see you at Porcfest. Glad you made it home all right. But yeah, look, everyone knows I don't like Molyneux. I haven't liked Molyneux for 8 years, 9 years. He's a hypocrite. He's annoying. He's a narcissist. He's a misogynist. He's not half as smart as he thinks he is. He's not intellectually honest. Blah, blah, blah. He has an annoying voice. He's ugly. There's a lot to be said. There's a lot of good things I can say about him too, right? He has had a successful channel. He is persuasive with a lot of people. That's not easy to do, and he deserves credit for that. He is a smart guy. I don't think he's the smartest guy in 6,000 years. In fact, to even use a number like that almost betrays a certain degree of ignorance, right? Why would you say that number? We don't have any philosophers from before 1000 BCE, so you're just tagging on an extra 3,000 years going back before, right? Because it just sounds like a bigger number, right? Everything about him not everything. So much about him is polluted with his flaws, but he shouldn't have been banned, right? And it's blatantly obvious that they are just special pleading the hell out of this. They have these community guidelines that are so nebulous, they don't mean anything, and they enforce them selectively, just like Twitter. Facebook is bad, but it seems like they are in a different way, and I don't want to go to them all, but yeah, they get rid of Alex Jones again after stuff that's so old that can't be the real reason they're doing it. Oh, because of all the things that Alex Jones said, they're going to get after him because of the Sandy Hook stuff. Come on. Alex Jones should go to Porcfest. Yeah, that would be awesome. What do you think about the fact that Biden is leading in most swing states right now? Don't care. I mean, like, for real, they're polls. It's too early. We don't have any philosophers before 6000 BCE. We don't, who didn't write down their thoughts, that is. I mean, he said 6,000 years ago, so that would be 4,000 BCE, but that's absolutely right. For context, the Great Pyramids were built in like 2100 BCE, and he said he's referring to basically 4,000 BCE. So, 1900 years before the pyramids were built. Like, that's just a number. It sounds like a big number he's pulling out of his ass. It is. There's no basis. And also, let's just be real. Of all the philosophers who lived, he's just putting himself, Plato, Aristotle, Kant, Ayn Rand, whoever you want to put, John Rawls, blah, 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 the list of every philosopher, poop, out, doesn't matter. And he's better than all of them. And what's amazing is his acolytes will honestly believe that they have come to some great rational conclusion that he is the greatest philosopher ever. And then you can ask them, name one book by another philosopher that you've read. And the answer is always zero. So it's this amazing thing where you can be an expert. What was what's the Kruger, the Dunning-Kruger effect? They don't know what they're talking. And look, and they're not necessarily stupid people, right? Many of his followers are not stupid at all. They're smart people. I respect some people who have been very much into Molyneux for many years. I have found a lot of value in some of the things that he said. Right? So there's smart people that can find him interesting. But that smart person doesn't mean that you're well-versed in philosophy or that you're in a position to judge that he's the best one ever. And if you think that he is, because he said so, and like, honestly, this goes back into the hypnosis thing, that's something you do in hypnosis. You tell somebody something, and then they repeat it back to you because they don't know any better, and they think that that's the conclusion they reached. Wow, he's the most compelling guy. He must be the best philosopher. Well, go read somebody else and see how compelling they are. And one benefit is he's real and he's there and you can watch him, and you can't watch Kant. You can't watch Aristotle. You can read them. You can listen to audiobooks where people read them, but you can't see them, and so they're not there to animate their talking points. Feels like nobody cares about the election, barely any news coverage or scandals. Yeah, this is going to rise or fall on Corona and the economy, and we just know where that's going to be in a couple months. So, how horrible do you think it would be if President Biden picks Hillary Clinton for Attorney General? I think that would be very dangerous for Biden, because somehow she would end up president in that situation. I actually like UPB. What do you think about UPB? I think that he made a very honest effort, and he failed. Look, he set out to do something very difficult, something that nobody's really successfully done. He did a good job writing something, but it just breaks down on the margins. He makes some. I'd have to read it again. I'm a little brushy, but I've listened to the whole book. I've read parts of it. He makes mistakes, all kinds of mistakes. Conflating is or ought, like control to ownership, or because you control your body, you have a right, like it's ethical then, right? So like if I can go like that, so that means snapping is ethical. No, you're still jumping the is-ought dichotomy there. So I give him points for trying. Like if I tried, the thing that I would write would not be as good as what he wrote, because that's a hard thing, and I'm not a philosopher. And I'll even give him the credit and say he's a philosopher, right? You don't need a license to be a philosopher. He talks about philosophy and he calls himself one. He makes a living doing it. He's a philosopher, just not a very good one. I don't know why there was such a rich anarchist culture in the late 19th century in America and parts of Western Europe that soon died. I hope Trump wins narrowly in the electoral college, but Biden wins popular vote big. Also, Dems keep the House, but don't get the Senate. And Jared, the next day, Ruth Bader Ginsburg dies. Boom. Like, let's say, or even like the day before the inauguration, she dies. Boom. Oh my God. Yeah. Part of Mahler's problem is, for some reason, he thinks good things must be able to be universally applied. There doesn't seem to be any connection there to me. If you think that commie infighting is pathetic, just remember there's still Venus Project people out there. Yeah, the Venus Project people were, I mean, my Venus Project videos get comments. They used to get comments all the time, all the time. It's died down some. Now that Fresco's dead, it's really cooled down quite a bit. But that technocratic utopian communist impulse is still out there. Those people did not become capitalists, or with very few rare exceptions. There's a few, but they're still out there, and they're just waiting for the next mimetic thing to tell them that everything they want is going to happen. And I do still get comments on that. People will comment and say, "You just don't understand a resource-based economy." Blah blah. Oh my God. So they're not that urge is not going away. It's been there for at least 100 years, 120 years, if not longer. Um, there are whispers. Jared, I'd love to hear where you heard whispers that Alito is going to retire soon, so the left would freak if he got two young appointments. Yeah, Machine Gun Alito. I remember when he got nominated, and the Brady campaign called him Machine Gun Alito. I wish that was true. Um, I couldn't handle another butthurt from the conservatives. Yeah, butthurt conservatives are not as fun as butthurt liberals. That's absolutely true. And I think that, I mean, look, Trump should be impeached. Trump's a terrible president. Blah blah blah. Goes without saying. I would take him over Biden or whoever he nominates as his VP. Unless he nominates Tulsi Gabbard, there's nobody that I would prefer, and he's not nominating her. So, um, because early anarchism was polluted with terrible commie ideas and utopianism. So I come over. I think that's a big part of it. You had all this stuff in the late 19th century, early 20th century, and then you had the Russian Revolution after World War I, and this really divided the left, and it sucked a lot of the anarchists. A lot of the anarchists died, right? A lot of anarchists in Russia and in Germany got killed by the communists, especially, but in Germany by other groups, and that strain of anarchism became locked in a struggle with its mortal enemy, communism, which crushed it. Not ideologically, but like with guns. Okay, and so um, you've got this effect where that's their enemy now. They're not talking about capitalism. They're not debating capitalism. They're not debating um, Fabian socialism. They're debating the communists because the communists tried to wipe them out quite successfully in the USSR and in Spain. And even here, I mean, they couldn't kill them in the United States, but they thwarted them as much as possible. Um, it's in the news today. It's highly speculative right now. Yeah, Jared, he's probably going to wait to see how the election goes. If a Democrat wins, maybe he'll try and stay in. If Trump wins, then he'll probably want to retire. You think Benjamin Tucker and Proudhon supported common ideas? Well, I don't know about those two specifically, but you've got Emma Goldman. There's a whole host of these people. Um, so even if you want to say those particular ones didn't, other ones did. So yeah, I'm waiting for Ginsburg to die and the left to freak if Trump wins again. We can't really put much stock in these polls. There's going to be debates. I think it seems very unlikely that Biden's going to do well in a debate. Biden has really been helped by the coronavirus because he's had an excuse not to campaign because I think he has serious problems. Even if you don't want to think that he's in serious senile decline, which I mean that could be an issue for Trump. Like Trump's old enough too that this could be a real problem for him as well. Just currently, it's not as big a problem as it is for Biden, but um, he doesn't have any charisma. He doesn't have a big devoted following. He doesn't have much of a message. So it's it's like he's not going to be Obama. He's not going to galvanize people like that is. He's going to anger a lot of the left no matter what he does because the left is becoming very fractious. Now, I'm not saying that he can't win, but I don't know. Polling at this stage just seems kind of who knows. It's funny you mentioned Spain and the anarchists. Many anarchists say read Orwell's book on it for a good example, but if you actually read it, it ends with the USSR liquidating everyone. Yeah, that's what he used for Animal Farm. The good leftists get killed by the pigs, by the Stalins. I think Biden will probably pick Kamala Harris. That's just disgusting, but very possible. I think Trump would be cruising to re-election if he didn't do a bunch of stupid mistakes, including hire Sessions and Middleton. Yeah, it's these fucking neocons and what lies behind that. And we all know that Trump is closely connected with that. And it's not Zog, but influence is influence, and it's a bad influence. You don't want to. You don't even have to say it's sinister. It's a bad influence. It's not good. It's not good nationalism when your nationalism is based on another country being as good or better. So you can't really be America first if America is second when it comes to a whole slew of questions. And uh, yet we are when it comes to foreign policy, at least in some areas. Duh, 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 duh. It does seem odd that BLM would support Biden and Harris. Well, Harris is a woman of color, but they're communists, and communists are liars, and communists will do whatever it takes to achieve their ends. They will make temporary friends, they will make alliances that they will betray the second that they can. I mean, it's right there in Lenin. He says that that's what they should do, and that's what they do. So, sure, they'll do anything. If they think it's in their interest to side with Biden one point and Trump another, they will, right? And the communists, famously in Germany said, well, let's side with the fascists to defeat the democratic socialists. And they did. And then the conservatives took over, and then the conservatives gave power to Hitler, and then Hitler liquidated the communists, right? Because he understood what they were going to do if they got the chance. Harris is also a cop, and they're supposed to be anti-cop. Yeah, they're supposed to be, but somebody's got to implement all their policies. Someone's going to have to do the reparations. Somebody's going to have to whatever, and a politician can just be a chameleon and change their mind and say, oh no, I always supported defunding the police, and by the way, here's my new brown shirts that are going to implement your woke policies on everybody, please vote for me. And they're like, yeah, that sounds good. We'll give you an advisory position, whatever, and they'll do it. I think unemployment would be really low if we didn't have COVID, and Trump would be leading. Better odds have Biden up big. Betting odds have Biden up big. Could be. All right, guys. Hour-long video. I think we're off Porcfest at this point. But yeah, I'd recommend people going. And in the future, think about it, ask questions about it, look up the Free State Project. I'm going to get more involved with Gun Church and some of the other things. I'm going to contact those guys probably in the next day or two, actually. I had a really good time. I wish more people came. I understand why few people, why it was the way that it was. But I think it actually was a good, healthy step for Porcfest to take back, kind of getting back to its roots a little bit. And I don't think anyone's going to complain. Nobody who was there that I talked to was upset with it. Everybody liked the scenario that we had. Are you coming back? Back? I was gone like a week. Come on, people. I'll do more videos and I'll do more podcasts. How about that? Deal. All right. I've been busy, people. Hypnotism takes a lot of time. Hiking takes a lot of time. Corona's been awful. I've just been spending all my time going to the beach and hiking. So it's been terrible. What can I say? But look, no, I still like to make videos and I'll still upload stuff because I know there's an audience and I enjoy talking about it. So I will share the stuff that I learn. But for now,